スピンしてるとき、前見えてるの？まあ、割と見えてるぜ。テイルスは動体視力がどうとかって言うけど、勘みたいなものもあるかも。まあ基本的にまっすぐすっ飛んでくし、よく見えないときも気にしないけどな。
It's a novel idea, right? He's a hedgehog. Of course he can spin around. A simple attack, and yet it's the bread and butter of the Sonic series. Cause almost every character knows this move. It's like Tackle in Pokemon, or the ground pound in Mario. It's not a particularly unique thing, and yet, what fascinates me the most about this move is the fact that even though it's universal among the Sonic cast, if I were to go and ask you what is Sonic's signature technique, there's only one answer. How does a move become so fundamental to one character, and yet so foundational for the entire lore it builds itself on? Sonic represents a pretty special archetype that's become something of a favorite for writers lately. The archetype is simple. This character really likes using one move. You've seen them before, right? Harry Potter, Naruto. All of these characters like to use one move. Whether it's Expelliarmus, Rasengan, or Thunderclap and Flash, the archetype may have access to other moves, but there's clearly a preference to one that they would love to go for. I've heard Ace in the Hole is the name for this archetype, the true opposite of the jack of all trades. But the name that I like to coin is Singleton. I might be a nerd. Sonic loves this move. There's not a single game in existence where he doesn't have some variation of this move. And it's crazy, right? On paper, this is a very restrictive archetype. How in the world am I supposed to write a cohesive character, let alone an interesting one? With only one move, it means my options are limited, both in a writing perspective and a practical perspective. And if done poorly, people will complain heavily about it. Notoriously, Naruto gets flack for how repetitive he is with his use of the Rasengan. Similarly, Ichigo gets similar complaints in Bleach. Sonic's answer was simple: variety. Obtain mastery so precise that you can use this move a million different ways. To show what I mean, let's actually break down the spin dash, show each of its variations and how they did such a great job building to his character. Observe these two techniques, spin dash and spin charge. The spin dash is designed to be a momentum tool. It is much more affected by physics than Sonic's regular movement, so aside from being an attack, it's mostly meant to be a means for Sonic to go faster, while spin charge, also being an attack move, is meant to be a means for Sonic to go from stationary to top speed mad fast. These two moves are fundamentally the same. It's Sonic taking the shape of a ball and rolling, but already these two moves stand out from each other. Most people don't even register that they are technically the same. How about the spin jump, his aerial version of the spin dash? It's practically an identical move, and even still, it's unique, as it's a move not even used for momentum or speed. It's purely meant for damage. These three techniques are the foundation of spin attack, the ones that most of the Sonic cast knows. Every other spin dash variation you would find, they're all variations of these three techniques. Look at spin jump, for example. You have the insta shield, where Sonic spins in the air much faster and creates a force field out of wind from it. You have the jump dash, where Sonic increases the torque in his spin jump and dashes forward. This move has a variation with Sonic Ballet, Sonic's more refined version of the jump dash, and a separate variation with homing attack, where Sonic aims the torque at his opponents to be able to hit them mid-air. Taking 2 steps backwards, there's another variation with spin dive, where Sonic uses spin jump and turns himself into a meteor, which also has its own variation with bounce, where Sonic uses the same fall to instead bounce higher. There's another variation with blue tornado, where Sonic spins around so fast he makes a tornado. And the most recent addition to the spin dash family, drop dash, which is a combination of spin jump and spin charge. Now take spin charge itself, which has its own versions with head spin, where Sonic does the spin charge dash on his opponent's head, or the Sonic Storm, where he uses the spin charge to create a blue shockwave at his opponent. And notoriously, the Lightspeed dash, which is a souped up version of the base spin charge. How about the drift, a variation of the spin attack, or the spiral spin in its variation, spiral feint and dizzy spin. You see a sort of skill tree is there with this type of system. And there are two things that pay unique attention to me when it comes to this particular tree. First one is how they've showed Sonic's perfection with these techniques, because while Sonic can use all of these moves, his friends can only use some of them. You may have noticed the little icons I've been showing of each character who knows this move. Only Tails Tails, Metal Sonic, and Shadow are holding a candle to him, and even then, they're not as good as him with this move. This ends up acting as an ingenious way to approach characters. For example, the copycat archetype. By making your character a copy, but have it so that their combative capabilities with one move isn't as good as said character, you can then write a new combative capability designed to bridge that gap. Both Metal and Shadow are better than most of the cast at using spin dash, but they don't have the same level of perfection as the main person they're copying it off of. So to make up for it, they have other techniques to help even the playing field better. Singleton characters hence end up having a great template to figure out how to do that archetype in a unique way. Metal Sonic makes up for his lack of perfectionism by his ability to copy techniques, while Shadow makes up for his lack of perfectionism by having chaos abilities. Not only are there narrative differences between these characters, there are differences between the power sets that keep this in mind. Of course, the copycat function will be given to a character who's technologically advanced, and of course chaos in its very concept would be given to the pessimistic character. The level of depth that this showcases works volumes for the characters, and it's not just this archetype as well. Look at all the characters in the skill tree. You get to see what moves are clearly the universal ones because of how many people know these moves, and yet also get a better understanding on each character individually. For example, Rouge having a skill tree like this, you can see she only knows the universal moves, which pushes the narrative that this move simply isn't a preference for her. And that's true. Throughout the series, she very rarely uses this technique, much preferring different moves over spinning around. You look at Shadow's own skill tree. It showcases he knows Blue Tornado and Light Speed Dash, both of which are the more powerful versions of Spin Dash. So maybe he's a character that likes being on the aggressive in a fight. And that would also be true, as Shadow is a much more aggressive combatant compared to Sonic, notoriously willing to fight more ruthlessly and willing to take out his opponents if need be. You can even look at Tails, and you can see how much Sonic's influence affects his skill tree, as he's one of the only characters that knows Insta Shield and Spin Dive along with Sonic, which actually does a good job establishing their relationship, as it lets you know of their specific connection, and acknowledges the fact that Sonic is a mentor to Tails. From having a universal moveset that Sonic has perfected, you're able to understand and figure out what is Sonic's connections to the other cast, along with their stances on combat, just by seeing what they know on the skill tree. And by using this, you have a reference points on how to write a character and show the relationships and fighting style. You could even potentially make a whole new character and keep this in mind. Probably the most fun example of this is Mighty the Armadillo, as he's the only character in the series who has a spin dash variation that Sonic does not have, Hammer Drop. Wanna know what that means? That gives the potential possibility of a character who has an entirely unique and different skill tree to Sonic's own, providing a perspective on him that this time is completely controlled by him. You have a character who shares none of Sonic's moves, but in spite of that, gives you the full understanding that these two characters share a close connection. Why? Because in spite of not sharing any moves, they're still perfectionists of the same craft. They're just different in how they do it. In a way, they become two sides of the same coin. The most well thought of approach to making a copycat of this archetype. It's really unfortunate that Mighty is relegated to Classic Era, because the potential that this approach could have, it needs no explanation. And in all of this, I'd be lying if I said I believe this was planned out, done on purpose, something Sega intended all this time. That simply is not the case. And if you are a Sonic fan, I wouldn't need to explain to you why it's not the case. A lot of the inner details and niche things that you find yourself appreciating in any work of art wasn't as intentional as you think. Like everyone else, most writers are just figuring it out as they go. When Sonic Team started this journey, they obviously didn't know that years down the line, they would make a 3D game and add a super spin dash in that game. Let alone make one more classic game and add an aerial spin charge in that game. All they did know is that they had a hedgehog with the swagger of MJ with the belief of freedom. And they've just been working with that ever since. When you're making a video game, oftentimes the abilities that you give to a character is all for gameplay reasons. And the two main approaches writers and creators have to make these abilities are exceedingly simple. Either they're simply trying to fix a complaint that people have given in the last game, or the hook of the current game has to mix with the old abilities in some way. Take the spin charge for example. The team didn't make this move because they wanted to give you this sense of progression in Sonic's power. They weren't even thinking about that when they first made this move. move. They made this move because in the very first game, they received complaints about how frustrating it is to handle some of the physics in it. The spin charge was made to address that complaint, and later on as they continued developing this game, Sonic team thought it would be pretty cool if this move had some sort of reason behind it. So when they decided that the second game was going to introduce Tails the Fox, they decided to put the two together. Not only was there a game where you didn't have to worry about running up a wall because you aren't fast enough, they decided to write a little story explaining that the spin charge was actually a move that came from Tails himself, having created this move on seeing Sonic spin dash. And just like that, by adding something new to the game, they took it as an opportunity to put more world building. How about head spin in Sonic the Fighters? With a new 3D fighting game, they wanted to give Sonic moves designed to work with the different options the game gives you. So when making a game where Sonic can grab you, Sonic team once more took the opportunity to mesh the hook of the game with Sonic's spin dash, creating a move where Sonic does the spin charge on his opponent's head. When it comes to games, it's almost right in your face. These two approaches help you figure out exactly where your variety lies. And multiple characters having the same moves is a game development trait too. You've played a Mario game with multiplayer, right? No, not these ones, these ones. Aside from stats, are there any real differences between movements of these characters? Not really. Everyone can long jump, everyone can backflip, everyone can spin jump. It's very typical that if you're making a game with multiple playable characters and you need all of them to play the same so it's fair to everyone, you're logically going to give them the same movesets. So it goes without saying that, yeah, there are universal moves between characters, because it goes without saying that you would need similar playstyles for fairness. By the way, Sonic team decided to play with this idea. Whilst also probably incidental, it was really clever too. Take Sonic Advance 3, the game that introduced the team up mechanic that changes how your characters play based on the team up. When they were working on Tails and Knuckles' team up, they could have given any other move to Tails, but they decided that he would know the insta shield. Someone in Sega decided, hey, it would be pretty cool and pretty sensible if he knew this move, didn't he? And in those little decisions, they've added a lot more depth to the character and their moveset, more than they probably expected. All that was needed was for them to be mindful of everything they have established in the series prior. And in doing this approach, game by game, story by story, that skill tree begins to form. And with each game choosing who can know the moves in that tree, you establish an approach to character building. So for something like video games, Sega and Sonic team were able to use their approaches to game development and turned each aspect of it to an advantage. Now, as effective as these methods are for video games, what about TV shows? If I was to write a singleton character in a TV series, I can't use the same approaches. I'm not building this world out of some hook, nor am I going to be able to somehow take complaints and turn that into power. Most shonen battle anime and most combat-centric cartoons usually have a hook that doesn't pertain to fun but for story development, and complaints about the show always boil down to the writing or pacing, never usually character movesets. So what's the approach? In what I've understood, writing this particular archetype takes the same mentality. Figure it out as you go. You put your character in certain situations that force them to get creative with their own abilities, and as such, create a new form of attack that they can start using from then onwards. Interestingly though, this isn't the only approach. Unlike video games where most of this isn't pre-planned, a good amount of power building in story is pre-planned. So if you made a certain technique that can only be seen as an evolution, that would have to be pre-planned, because otherwise it kinda comes out of left field. For a hypothetical, if Sonic team was to make a Sonic TV show instead of games, moves like the head spin or the homing attack would just happen naturally as they're writing the series, where you would put the hedgehog in situations that would warrant him needing to find a new application to manage. A move like homing attack could reasonably be thought of if Sonic had to face an aerial opponent, but moves like light speed dash would definitely be built up to it. It'd be something a writer thinks of and accounts for later, especially since in the games, light speed dash required Sonic had a unique piece of tech that allows him to do that. So in one case, a move is established because the protagonist needed to overcome an adversity, and as a result get creative. Another case, the series has built up to this moment by treating it as an evolution. Light speed dash is technically an evolved version of spin dash, far faster and far stronger than anything spin dash was capable of in the past, so it would warrant needing to be pre-planned. Otherwise, this specific upgrade may feel rushed in or improperly explained. It's like how in Naruto, all the ways he used shadow clones and transformation are naturally figured out as he goes, whether it's his fight against Zabuza or Kiba or his fight against Pain and Sasuke, where the writer puts him in a corner corner and creates a tense situation that once again the protagonist needs to figure his way out of. But the steps to make Rasen Shuriken could only really be done by planning ahead. The whole series has dived deep on how this technique was his father's, so that the reveal that the technique was actually incomplete and the reason it's incomplete is due entirely to the sheer difficulty of it ends up explaining by itself the next evolution and acts as a brilliant stepping stone to figure out what his next milestone is and give you an actual sense of whether he's going to surpass his predecessors or not. And for Sonic specifically, where he has characters with similar moves and he has his own abilities, that would most likely have to require some prerequisite world building. Before you can start writing your story on any brand new world, you would have to establish the kind of world it is. It would have to be decided from the start, the existence of this move, its core variations, whether it's universal or not, whether there's gonna be a character that is a perfectionist with it, whether there'll be character variations with it. It's like you're writing a story about a magic academy. You need to write down what spells every wizard should know. It's just that in Sonic's particular case, he ends up taking one of these spells to an absolute extreme. When it comes to actual story writing, world building is the perfect place to decide when and how things like this should work. When you have preset rules on the power system, or in Sonic's case, something more like a fighting style, it comes easier to know whether you think certain characters can have this move or not. Keeping prerequisites like what type of people can learn this move, what extents they can use it, would they even care about knowing these moves, and would they care about pushing it to these extents, are the many questions you can begin to ask. For example, notice how the people who do have spin dash variations are either characters who are noted for being speed classes or characters who are noted to have kept pace with Sonic in the past. There's actually a whole subsystem that spin dash has with the three types. It just wasn't really explored much across the series, so I didn't really bring it up until now. But even there, it gives you a hint on whether a character should know variations or not, and to what extent. And ensuring that some of these moves are specific to Sonic and only Sonic are important too, to ensure to anyone that he is indeed the best at using this one technique. It's putting your logic at work and just making sense to yourself whether it feels right or not for someone to know this move. All of this is for one single move when he notoriously has other moves too. Imagine the level of skill he would have if his boost abilities, wind manipulation, and chaos energy manipulation was also delved into and maximized. Sonic would feel a lot less impressive. He would be a pretty unstoppable character and he would begin to feel like a Mary Sue. But instead, the writers decided to keep those abilities to a sensible extent, ensuring that he never once feels that way to the audience. It gives a person more character to give them multiple options, but for them to have preferences to a set of specific ones. So even for characters that categorically do not fall under the singleton archetype, giving them the ability to hold priority over some moves just a little more than others is also an approach of writing if you think about it. It gives a perspective on the character that's very much unique to them and only them. This move is, as a result, an incredible reference point on how to not just approach this type of character, but also how powers and abilities can tie into the world that you have made. You would be surprised by just the sheer number of meaningful ways you can connect something as simple as a person's power to the story and world around them. And whether Sega decides to toy with this concept more in the future is left to be seen. And many of you can question the validity that is everything I brought to the table here today. But what can I say? When there's a move out there that is so overused, it's usually hated. It's usually annoying, and it's one of the biggest complaints within any fandom. And yet not this move. This move is beloved. It's so beloved by the fans that the moment they see it gone, they want it to return. Then I think that this one simple move, novel or not, deserves every single bit of attention and benefit I'm giving it. Thanks for watching.